Deacons had very important positions in those days, taking care of the needs of the church, and he was the right-hand man, perhaps, of Saint Sixtus II, who died just a few days before him. When Valerian was emperor, he issued edicts of persecution against the church, and then they arrested Saint Sixtus, the Pope, and they carried him away. And as he was being carried away, Saint Lawrence went up to him and said, "Father, where are you going without your deacon?" And Sixtus said, "Don't worry, you'll be following me in 3 days." So Lawrence was full of joy that his martyrdom was soon to come. So he gave away all the money that he had, and sold many of the church's sacred vessels to get money for the poor, and he gave them to all the poor in the city of Rome. And the Roman prefect found out about it, and he called him and commanded him to gather the riches of the church and to give them to him so that he can give them to the emperor for the royal army. And so he said, "Well, give me 3 days. Give me a few days of inventory so I can gather the riches of the church." He said, "Indeed, the church's riches are great, and even greater than the emperor's riches." So he gave him 3 days to gather so-called riches of the church, and Lawrence gathered all the poor of Rome, all the cripples, all the lame, all the lepers, all the widows and orphans, and gathered them all and seated them all in rows on a stairway, perhaps, on a church, and called the prefect, and he came out and saw all this wretched poor seated together, and he was enraged and said, "What is this?" And Lawrence said, these are the riches of the church." And he was full of anger, and he said, "I know you want to die, Lawrence, but I'm going to make you die a slow death. I'm going to make you die by inches," he said. So he stripped Lawrence and put him on a spit and roasted him on a slow fire. And as he was being burned to a slow death, his face was illumined, and the smell of his flesh gave off a sweet odor. Says the Christians that were there at the execution. And after he was roasted for a long time, he said he was done on this side and he could be turned over. When he was turned over, he said, "Now you can eat." But as he was dying, he was praying for the conversion of Rome, and then he died, and many of the senators who were present at the death were converted on the spot, and it's attributed to him and to his prayers that idolatry was soon after stopped in the city of Rome, and conversions began, and the persecution abated after his death. So we see the fruit here of a holy death, of someone who died truly for the sake of Christ. And we have this gospel here, our Lord saying, "Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat, but if it dies, it produces much fruit." So we are to take from the example of St. Lawrence that we are to die to ourselves, and the more we die to ourselves, the more we will bear fruits of conversion, fruits of good works, and salvation of souls. So we need to die each day more and more to ourselves, meaning to live more and more of a life of sacrifice, selflessness, so that souls can be saved, so that we can bear much fruit, so that we can do more and more good for the church and good for the souls. We ask St. Lawrence to teach us to die more and more to ourselves each day, to live a life of sacrifice to the ultimate sacrifice of our death.
Fructum ventris tuum,